off, but if not, the license plate number is 615JX8, and the lights were on. Okay, we are approaching the hour of 7 o'clock. If you could please come in and be seated. If we could have the tellers please come forward, and if we could have everyone please take a seat so we can count the quorum. Has to be over in that section over there. Yep. You have to take it from over there and you have to figure it out. If I might have the tellers come forward, and please everyone take your seats. Let me give a couple more minutes for these people to get in. Another minute. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please come in and be seated.
Gino did?
I just want to give these people that are still standing in line a chance to get in. If you please can make your way in and have a seat. Come on. Come on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats so we can have a quorum count. The tellers will please come forward and count the voters in the hall. Please raise your cards up so you can be counted. Please make sure that they are held up high, that they're not at your waist, so that the tellers can easily see them. When they finish counting your row, they will let you know that it's okay to put your cards down. If there are any non-voters in the hall, please make your way up to the front section on my left. This is the non-voting section. Please make absolutely sure if you are a non-voter that you are sitting in this section. While the tellers are taking a vote, let me remind you that the only entrance and exit that you should be using is this door to my left, and this is to protect the integrity of the meeting so that the voters are checked in and out. Please do not use the door on my right, and the door in the rear of the hall will be used by the TV personnel, and we do have identification for them, and it is being monitored by an officer. Section number 1.
Section 138.
Section 138, 38. Section 2.
43.
Section 2, 43. Section 3.
72.
I'm sorry,
72.
72, 72. Section 4.
41.
41, 41. We have 194 voters in the hall. We have a quorum. The meeting will be called to order. Just to go over a few rules, all of the rules that I mentioned last night are still in effect through the duration of this meeting. But for the benefit of those who may not have been here last evening, I'm just going to highlight the more important ones. That the government of town meeting not specifically provided for by law shall be determined by the rules of practice contained in Robert's Rules of Order, the 75th Anniversary Edition, town meeting time, town meeting tradition, and those rules set forth by the moderator. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 15, whenever a 2/3 vote is required by statute, a vote may be declared as such by the moderator without a count and be recorded by the clerk upon such declaration, provided, however, that if 7 or more voting members of town meeting doubt the vote, a counted vote shall then be taken. This is in accordance with Article 12 of the October 27, 2003 town meeting and approved by the Attorney General on November 21, 2003. The warrant, which was duly posted in every precinct and posted on the town website, is the agenda for town meeting, and town meeting does not come to an end until all the agenda items on the warrant have been decided, either by approval, by being defeated, or no action deliberately taken. The moderator will ask for a motion for each article, and voters should listen carefully to the motion as stated, since the vote and the debate is on the motion. It may be slightly different than the article printed in the warrant, which is why it's important for you to pay attention to what the actual motion is. To make it a little easier for the voters, we do have the motions up on the screens so that you can read it as they're being read. Following the motion by the Finance Committee, the moderator will ask the proponent to speak to the article. The moderator will then ask the Board of Selectmen for their vote, and then the Finance Committee for their vote and their recommendation and explanation. And then debate will be open. As voted last night, the proponent will have 5 minutes to speak, and speakers that wish to speak to the article will have 2 minutes. Voters should approach the 2 microphones on either side of the aisle and wait to be recognized by the moderator before speaking. And again, for safety reasons, I would ask that we only have 2 speakers at the microphone at any given time. Please clearly state your name, direct your comments to town meeting through the moderator, and please limit your remarks to the content and specifics of the article. I ask that everyone be civil and respectful, that there be no calling out, no applause, no rude behavior, and if there is, any person who persists in disorderly conduct will be warned by the moderator and asked to leave. Amendments can be offered to any article being debated, and to offer an amendment, a voter needs to give the text to the moderator, which can be given to the town clerk so that it can be properly recorded. The moderator will recognize the mover of the amendment, and the amendment will be debated and then voted up or down before returning to the debate on the article as a whole. Amendments to amendments will not be allowed. Reconsideration. A motion to reconsider, if approved by a simple majority, enables the majority to bring back for further consideration a motion that has already been voted on. And the purpose of reconsidering a vote is to permit correction of hasty, ill-advised, or erroneous action, or to take into account added information or a changed situation that has been developed since the taking of the vote. For the purposes of our town meeting, reconsideration can only be considered on the evening that the article comes before us, and only under those circumstances. With regards to the policy of taking photographs, we have a designated area over to my right for the taking of photographs. I have been alerted to those who are there to take their photos, and also we have a recording by one of the newspapers that will be recording as well. Some important reminders: there is no smoking on school property, and this means that you can't go out and sit in your vehicle if it's in the parking lot to smoke. You need to leave the property in its entirety. This is a state law. If you're parked in a fire zone, I would encourage you to go out and move your vehicle because it is enforced. Please be considerate of those around you and turn off your cell phones. And as a reminder, there is no food or drink in the auditorium, although you are allowed to have water. Before we begin, Article 2, Section 2-6 of the Town Charter states that all department heads shall attend the sessions of each town meeting for the purpose of providing the town meeting with information pertinent to warrant articles. If any such person is deterred by illness or other reasonable cause, he shall delegate a deputy to attend in his place. I will now call for a roll call of the departments. Administration, Animal Control, Assessor, Board of Health, Chief of Police, Collector Treasurer, Community Development, Conservation, Council on Aging, Emergency Medical Services, Finance Committee, Harbor Master, Inspectional Services, Library, Municipal Maintenance, Water Pollution Control, Planning, Superintendent of Schools. We have the Selectman and the Town Clerk, as well as the Finance Committee. Before we begin, I have asked if Town Council could have a point of personal privilege, and I will certainly allow that, Mr. Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't know if Mrs. Langford is here or not. Last night, she happened to ask me a question about the budget, and as I was getting home last night... Thank you. As I was saying, I don't know whether Mrs. Langford is here, but last night she asked me a question about the budget. And as I was heading home, and you tend to replay these things in your mind and try to evaluate what you did and figure out whether it was any good. So I was thinking about the answer I gave to Mrs. Langford, and I thought, well, that wasn't a very good answer. So I wanted to say my apologies to Mrs. Langford and explain that sometimes my legal training gets in the way of my common sense, and I think my answer was a pretty good example of that. I know I rambled on a bit about the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, and I wanted to assure Mrs. Langford and the members of the meeting that we'll be taking into account not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, which is to get you every piece of information that you need so that you can be reassured in the decisions that you make and that you know that you're acting on the best possible information, then that's what will be done. So I'd like to offer my apologies to Mrs. Langford and to anybody else on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Now, last evening before we adjourned, we actually had pulled Article number 42, as you know, that the articles now are being done by lottery, and that was by vote of town meeting. So we are on and will open with Article number 42. As I stated last night, there is a perception, because my husband has a business that is related to the industry, that there is a perception of maybe a conflict. So I recused myself. I will recuse myself tonight and turn the meeting over to our deputy moderator, Mr. Joseph Ashley, to handle Article 42. I would just ask you to remember this is his first town meeting. Please be considerate, please be a little patient, and I turn the meeting over to Mr. Ashley.
Madam Moderator, point of
Selectman
information,
Holmes.
if I may. Last evening, I believe you said that you had consulted with town council as to your status of this article. And if I recall correctly, you stated that town council was, felt it was appropriate that you moderate this warrant article. So I guess my question, my point of information that I want answered is, why would you then recuse yourself when town council has okayed you to moderate this article? I received a lot of calls today, so as you can imagine.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. It's a matter of a personal decision. My husband runs a septic business, and there is that perception out there, and even though technically there is no conflict of interest, I do understand that there are those who do have the perception, and it's just my personal feelings that I don't feel I want anyone to have any doubt, and this is just my nature. I want to be absolutely sure that nobody has any question at all as to my integrity or intent in hearing any of these. So I feel more comfortable that if I would step aside.
Good evening. We have before us Article 42. Do we have a motion on that article?
Yes, we do. My name is Bob Brady, Precinct 6. And my name is on this article as a petitioner. Just for the record, a petition article can be inserted by anyone in this body. It requires a simple 10 signatures of registered voters. I just happen to be the first signature on that petition, therefore I get to speak to it first. You all get to speak to it if you choose. But the motion is that I move. Can you hear me if I stand here? No? Can you put that on? Thank you. That's better. Thanks. I move that the town vote to amend the general bylaws of the town of Wareham by deleting in its entirety Division 6, Article 2A, nitrogen net zero for new construction, including all related subsections thereto. Thank you.
We have a second to speak to the article?
Yes, please. First and foremost, for the record, contrary to what you may hear or what you may read, this article is absolutely about clean water for Wareham, whether that's open water, groundwater, or drinking water. Back last fall, we voted to adopt this bylaw, which in it holds a standard that we've all come to realize is unrealistic. There is no way that anyone can acquire a net zero load for new construction unless you're possibly one or two huge major developers who also have cranberry bog as part of their holdings. To the average individual landowner developer, zero is unrealistic. As of a Board of Health meeting just this past Wednesday, we had attendance by some of the key people in the region, and I'm going to, for the record, state their name and their titles, who told all of us in the room, together with the Board of Health members, that nitrogen net zero is unrealistic. And then we started to banty about whether or not 4 or 5, that's milligrams per liter, or something more like 10 or 12, or maybe even something closer to Title V in the mid to upper teens is realistic. Nevertheless, Jonathan Hobel, who's the acting deputy director for the Southeast region of the Department of Environmental Protection, Dr. George Hufelder, who's the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment, Dr. Joe Costa, who's the Buzzards Bay National Estuaries Program representative, Mark Rasmussen, the president of the Coalition of Buzzards Bay, Corin Peterson, who's counsel for the Coalition of Buzzards Bay, together with various members of the community, together with some of our newly elected members to the Board of Selectmen, together with proponents of the bylaw we adopted back last fall. And I don't think there's anybody in this room that can tell any one of us that nitrogen net zero is realistic. Accordingly, what we've chose to do is, as we continue to make efforts to adopt regulations for the town of Wareham going forward, from this day forward, and not just for new construction, but for all wastewater, whether you have a failed cesspool, whether you have a Title V that's right on a bordering wetlands or open water, it doesn't matter. Wareham has to do its part to reduce its nitrogen load into eventually Buzzards Bay, whether it's through the Wareham River, from Upper Agawam River, the Wongkinko River, the Weweantic River, it doesn't matter. Wareham has to do its part. Accordingly, the Board of Health is committed, together with various people in town, to draft the regulations to eventually adopt, and it is in their purview to do so with realistic standards. I urge you to repeal the bylaw, let the efforts continue with the Board of Health, and get this back on track to address the load in the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Do I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen, please?
Mr. Moderator, the vote of the Board of Selectmen was, they voted favorable action, 3 in favor, 2 against, 0 abstaining.
Thank you. And may I have the vote from the Finance Committee?
The finance, if the Finance Committee voted favorable action 5-0-2 to repeal this.
I will now open the article for discussion. Speaker on my right.
Good evening. My name is Eddie Pasevich. I'm chairman of the Clean Water Committee, and I was the proponent of the article that passed at the fall town meeting. Just to start off with a few items quickly, the handout that you received, nitrogen fact sheet. Vote yes on Article 42, which is to repeal the only bylaw we have that stops nitrogen pollution from new development. And it goes to clean up the waters of Wareham. You want to tell me how we're going to clean up the waters if we're reducing and removing and repealing the only bylaw that we have that limits nitrogen pollution for new development? Some other issues of this fact sheet. And if you believe what it said there about cleaning up the water, the fact sheet says that the Board of Health, this is beyond their realm to deal with the environment. I beg to differ. Look at Chapter 111, Section 31, or look at the Environmental Code, Section 310, CMR 15-00. Clearly states the Board of Health is to protect public health, safety, and the environment. This particular handout, which you'll see in various forms, is filled with lies, half-truths, and innuendos. Secondly, on April 2nd of this year, the Coalition for Buzzards Bay Wareham Nitrogen Consensus Group had a meeting. At this meeting,
20 seconds.
excuse me,
20 seconds.
20 seconds? Well, I'll have to ask the body for at least 2 more minutes, please.
Very well. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. At the meeting on April 2nd, the group came to a consensus that proponents of this article would move for no action. Evidently, that didn't mean much to the proponents because they just went on their way to move forward. Third, I was a happy member of that sham subcommittee to deal with nitrogen regulations. And I do mean sham committee. It was, the selections on the committee were made by the health agent solely. At a third meeting of this committee to draw up nitrogen regulations, the third meeting, we had an engineer stand up and say, why don't we postpone these regulations and wait till April so we can repeal this bylaw? That's at our third meeting. 7 of the 10 residents on this committee are proponents to repeal the bylaw. This committee never once offered an alternative to making the bylaw work. And there were several. Copeland Page gave us the opportunity to implement fees and told us how to do it. That will make nitrogen net zero work. They refused to examine this. Nobody mentioned composting toilets that discharge 0 nitrogen. That would make nitrogen net zero work. We are currently working, we being the group, the Clean Water Committee, the Coalition, and several other experts in the area with the Board of Health to establish nitrogen regulations. We are very close to establishing the regulations, and I do commend the Board of Health for all the work they've put in trying to reach these regulations. And last but not least, nowhere will you see in any of this documentation what passed this article last fall, the fairness issue. Ladies and gentlemen, you're paying for your betterments for sewer, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. And for every house that you pay, for every $25,000 you pay, a new house is built and just canceled the nitrogen that you took out of the watershed and out of the bay. If you want to keep flushing your toilet down, your hard-earned money down the toilet, repeal this article.
Could you
That's what these
wrap up your
proponents
statement,
want.
please?
Thank you.
Speaker to my right.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just say a couple of things about this repeal.
Could you state your name for the
I'm sorry, my
record?
name is Jane Donahue, Precinct 3. Apologize, Mr. Moderator. Just like to say a couple of things about this article. The first thing I'd like to say is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I do intend the pun. This is a nitrogen bylaw that there are parts of that will work. And if you throw away the entire article, then you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to start somewhere. We started with this article last year, this bylaw last year, and if we keep it, we have a start. Doesn't mean that every piece of it will work, but part of it will work, and we should work with the parts that will work. The other thing I wanted to say is that with regards to the regulations being written, some of you may have been watching television the night that we had the Board of Health in to talk about the regulations and the committee that was writing them. It would be a really good idea if we had a committee that was appointed properly and that was in favor and really working towards writing the regulations properly. I think that that would help, and I know that the Board of Health is working towards that end at this point in time. The last thing I'd like to say is that this article, this bylaw, is still before the Attorney General. It hasn't been approved by the Attorney General yet. And the reason that it hasn't been approved by the Attorney General yet was because they got a lot of calls from people who were against this bylaw. So they decided to take a little bit of a longer look. They actually sent correspondence to the town requesting an additional 90 days to review the bylaw. So they're going to come back and they're going to say either thumbs up or thumbs down on this bylaw. And I have a feeling that, you know, again, it was looked at a little bit extra because there were a few people who were making phone calls saying, please look at this some more, because we don't like it and we don't think that it can work. I don't think they got as many calls from people who were saying, we think we can make part of this work and we'd like to keep it. So I think we're moving a little bit prematurely here with repealing a bylaw that hasn't even been approved by the Attorney General yet, and we'll soon have an answer from them. So I would just, in closing, ask your consideration to keep this bylaw in place. We've tried many times to get a bylaw passed, and this was the first time we were successful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Speaker to my right.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Mike Flaherty, Precinct 1. Just a quick question. Will this require a 2/3 vote?
No, it only requires a majority vote.
Okay, thank you. The previous speaker brought up some points that I was going to make, and I'm hearing some rhetoric that you know, this is unenforceable, this is impossible. It is still with the Attorney General, and I think we should leave it up to them to decide that. And I urge the people here to vote down this article. Thank you.
Joseph Mulkern, Precinct 2. Mr. Moderator, you stated this is a majority vote.
That is correct.
Is that correct? Because to the town council, I thought this was a 2/3 vote because it's a bylaw.
Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, it's a general bylaw as opposed to a zoning bylaw. General bylaws require only majority votes. Zoning bylaws require 2/3 votes.
So it's a 2/3 vote. Thank you.
No. It's a majority.
It's a general bylaw, so it's a majority vote.
Mr. Bonk?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Is your name Donna?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Can I be you tonight, Donna? I thought he said Kara. They sound alike. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that everyone in this building, everyone in this town wants clean water, and we appreciate the efforts that the committee has made. But if you were to watch that selectmen's meeting and how they totally humiliated and treated the Board of Health, it was appalling that people that got together to do something good for the
State your
town.
point.
Directly to the article. The subject matter is not germane to the article.
You would know.
Order.
Sustained. Mrs. Bonk, can you please stick to the discussion on
Sure.
the article?
Sure. The people that worked on this article were criticized, and they were criticized publicly, they were criticized privately, and they came together for the good of all of us. The reason the Attorney General's office hasn't voted on this is because no one else in the state has a bylaw like this. This is a very difficult process, and the Board of Health rightfully has had a difficult time coming up with a solution. So what I'm saying is basically support this article. Defeat the article that went back in April. Let's do the right thing and give the people of Wareham the thing that is right.
Ms. Winslow, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I signed the petition to repeal this bylaw. And I signed it because I don't believe that it can work as written. I also believe that with or without a bylaw, the Board of Health has the ability to write and enforce regulations. At some point tonight, we're going to all be asked to look at the repeal of the wind power that we once voted at town meeting. And the reason that's become controversial is because of one project. So I ask you all to think about this. 5 years from now, when something happens, and only a portion of this can be enforced and another portion can't, maybe we have a lawsuit over the offsets and other things that we already know you can't do, then we're going to be sitting here having the same discussion. If we're going to do this, let's do it right. Doing it halfway doesn't make any sense just to do it. I want clean water. We all want clean water. But we have to ask ourselves whether the end will justify the means, and whether we can enforce this, whether it makes sense, and whether in the end it benefits the community as a whole. And I don't believe that as written it does. If we can only use a piece of this or a portion or this piece and that piece, that doesn't make any sense. Let's do this correctly. Let's put it in the hands of the people it belongs in, the Board of Health, to write the regulations and enforce
10
them.
seconds.
Thank you.
Gentleman to my right.
Thomas Bickey, Precinct 3. I rise in support of the Article 42. Unlike a previous speaker, I don't necessarily support a seriously flawed article just because a seriously flawed article is better than no article at all. I think the town deserves much better, and I think we're capable of doing that. One issue that hasn't been discussed in any great detail is that there are serious concerns about the legality of a number of these components of the current bylaw as it exists. We've spent a tremendous amount of money in legal fees, and I can assure you that various special interest groups, and that's exactly what they are, realtors, developers, builders, individual property owners that own a single lot and want to build a home, will be challenging every aspect of this current bylaw. And we can be prepared to spend several $100,000 supporting an article, being the guinea pig. Yes, the guinea pig. That's what the DEP said. Wareham will be the guinea pig to see if this article will hold muster. I suggest to you that perhaps maybe there are more wealthy communities in the state of Massachusetts that are willing to spend $200,000 or $300,000 to be the guinea pig for a clean water petition. That's the economic side of it. From an environmental side, as a geologist, I've stated over and over and over again when we've discussed nitrogen, that nitrogen management is a watershed issue. We are going to impose restrictions on the economic development of Wareham.
20 seconds.
Do I get 5 minutes? I'm a proponent. Can I have 2 more minutes then?
You can ask for it.
Would we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Can we try that again? Can I have all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Motion fails.
I'm going to ask for a hand count.
Do you have 7 people to stand with you? All right, hand count it is.
No, I, right, what's wrong?
You get to vote too, right?
At this time, can you please raise your card so the tellers can count you? If you are in favor, sorry,
Letting him speak, right?
for an extra 2 minutes.
Sure.
So much free speech.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Is everybody finished counting? All right. Can I have section 1, please?
Section 130,
Section 2?
Section 222,
Section 3?
48,
48. Section 4?
18.
That's 118 in the affirmative. Can I hear, and if you are opposed, please raise your cards.
Doesn't matter because you only got 190 some people there. Excuse me. Do the mathematics here, son.
That guy raised his card. The guy we just let speak. See?
Sure, but people gone in and out, he's thinking.
He'd be done by now.
Before the night's over.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
Can I have section 1, please?
Section 110.
Can I have section 2?
20,
Section 3?
35.
Section 4?
15. 15.
15.
Did it carry or no?
We have 118 in the affirmative and 80 in the negative. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, audience. I'm glad to see that some people appreciate common
That's out of order,
discussion.
sir.
My apologies to the moderator. So as I was saying, we need to take a watershed approach. We're going to impose economic conditions on the economic development and welfare of Wareham, who dumps water into the watershed that Carver and South Plymouth and Marion and Middleborough and Lakeville contribute nitrogen to our watershed, yet they don't have any economic considerations imposed upon them. So we're unfairly burdening the town of Wareham. If you're concerned about economic development, fine. There are appropriate ways that we can do that. The town of Bourne has an algorithm, a mathematical formula that they use to determine the amount of nitrogen loading that goes on, that takes into consideration the size of the septic system, the size of the lot, the amount of impervious surface, the amount of nitrogen fertilizer that's applied. There's a whole host of ways that we can approach the nitrogen problem without a draconian way of imposing an unrealistic zero nitrogen limit on the system. So if you're not concerned about paying exorbitant amounts of legal fees, if you're not concerned about the economic development of the town, then vote in opposition to this article. If you're for those things, then let the health department, let the planning department, and let zoning come up with a realistic program, and also include the Clean Water Committee in that organization to come up with a viable alternative to this draconian bylaw that we have right now. Thank you.
Speaker on my right.
John Donahue, Precinct 3. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to offer an amendment for further study of Article 42.
We have a second. Can I get that amendment in writing?
Certainly, I'd be happy to do that. If you don't mind, after I have to say what I have to say.
You may speak.
Further study. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest about this. We voted an article last fall for clean water. Everybody says they're in favor of clean water. There have been suggestions that this article is unworkable, it's flawed, it can't be done. I submit to you, we haven't really even tried. So let's try. And if there are issues, let the Attorney General address them, let the Board of Health address them, let the Board of Selectmen address them, the Clean Water Committee, anybody else who's interested in clean water in the town of Wareham. It's been suggested this is unprecedented. That's not a bad thing. We're the first town that wants to have at least the goal of not introducing harmful chemicals into the water system that our children and our grandchildren are going to inherit. That's the legacy that we want to leave them. We passed the article. We don't want to pass the article. We want to rescind the article. What do? Come back at the next town meeting and have another article for clean water? Please. We can go through this over and over and over again. But let's give it a chance. I suggest we give it a chance. Let the bodies do their job. Let's not talk about personalities. Let's not talk about who went to meetings and were opposed to it. Let's talk about who wants to do something to improve the quality of our water, to improve the quality of our life. Let's vote for further study. If it does not work, which some people have suggested it can't, if it does not, we can address this at a future town meeting. Thank you.
While Mr. Donahue writes up the amendment, can I have the speaker in the red shirt on my left?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dave Walton, District 3. I'd like to make a couple of comments. I've stated in front of this board, and I've stated, I suppose, a lot of times, the one thing that we need desperately in this town is middle-income, year-round residency. What does this do to that? doesn't hurt the poor people, doesn't hurt affordable, doesn't hurt the rich people who come in for summers. It goes and attacks the one group of people that we need in the town. We need middle income for this town to survive. They stay in the town, they spend money in the town will survive. That's number one. Number two, for people who don't know, there was talk earlier, a previous speaker, about the consensus. If you people don't know what that is, it's merely a group of people that are very interested in this from all aspects, from cranberry owners to very big proponents of saving our water. The agreement at that meeting in Bourne was that this zero does not work. There was talk about putting percentages in there and grams or whatever. That was discussed, but the consensus or the agreement at the consensus, what this does not work. All we're trying to do, as what was we're from day one, let's do something that works, not something that's half right, half wrong, going along the line. And the final thing is, we talk about this. Why don't we bring in the Coalition to Save Buzzards Bay and bring in the experts with all the
20
charts,
seconds.
the diagrams, and show us? Because it's a great presentation, and we'll all agree to it. It's a great idea, but let's do it properly.
We have before us an amendment for Article 42. I've heard a second on that. The amendment was to move Article 42 to further study. May I have the speaker on my left, please?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Cliff Sylvia, Fairfield Drive. I rise in opposition to the amendment, and I'll tell you why, and it has nothing to do with nitrogen. It has to do with further study. This article was proposed to amend basically the article that we passed at town meeting. If we should vote on Article 42 as it is presented. Further study, all it does is keep the original motion in place, and you can further study it. However, if you vote this up or down, it still requires further study. So by voting Article 42 up or down, the end result is going to be further study. But for those proponents of 42, what it will do is negate the action that was taken at a previous town meeting. So I think that this is a backdoor approach to get what they want, and I don't support it, and I think further study is the wrong thing to vote here tonight. Thank you.
Speaker to my right.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brenda Ekstrom, Precinct 2. Just a brief comment on to the previous speaker's point of whether this is going to be further studied regardless. I would like to ask this body to either vote for the study or vote this down. And the reason why is because, as it's been said before, this is at the Attorney General. If there are flaws with this or if there's something wrong with this, the Attorney General will strike it down. But to be honest with you, the town of Wareham, we put it in October, they asked us for more time, and now we're going to go back and say to them, oh, we don't want it now. I think that the Attorney General should be able to tell us whether it's valid or not. And it kind of raises my interest as to why are these people so quick to rip it down before the Attorney General has a chance to look at it. And with my remaining time, I would like to ask the Finance Committee, because I see your explanation here, and it seems to be that it's all opinion. And I would like to know what would be the impact to this town if the Department of Environmental Protection came down with a consent order telling us that because we haven't addressed the nitrogen issues in town, that we would have to build another plant and sewer the remaining areas in town. I would just like to know if you have the research on that.
Is that a formal question, or is that part
That
of
is
your
a formal
statement?
question.
Okay, to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I did not draft this recommendation, but I'll try my best to explain it as I understand it. I happen to be one of the members of the consensus committee.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator, to answer the question, my question is, how much money will it cost? What will it cost the town?
Mr. Pons, to the question.
I have no answer to that. I apologize.
Oh, okay, because my understanding is Falmouth is looking into it, and it's $50 to $80 million for the new plant, with betterments that will range between $60,000 and $80,000 per household. I think that we need to take a step, do the zero nitrogen. Why should the residents, many people here have had to hook into sewer and paid
20 seconds.
$12, $15, $30,000 betterments is the new anticipated one. Why should we have our residents, our current residents, doing that so that we can allow the developers to build
Point of order.
subdivisions?
I was asked a question.
And you did not know the answer, sir.
I still have the floor, I believe. Mr. Moderator?
No, you do not.
I apologize.
You didn't have.
And-
Ms. Ekstrom?
Thank you. And so what I'm saying is that which neighborhood will be next of you that will have to put in $30,000 or $45,000 septic systems because we've allowed developers to go in and do subdivisions.
Time.
And they have not had to address the issues that they're polluting in our water. So I beg you for further study, and if not further study, then vote the whole thing down. Thank you.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I now will address the recommendation of the Finance Committee as I understand it.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry, Richard Paulson, Precinct 3. I will address the recommendation as best I can in terms of the conclusion that we came to on the Finance Committee. That recommendation, if you will, in part is colored by my having been and being on the consensus committee that met in early April that other speakers have referred to. One thing here that in the write-up, no officially appointed body was ever constituted to draft and prepare Board of Health regulations for adoption. That was our conclusion as a Finance Committee, and it was something we talked about in our early April meeting in Bourne. I said then publicly that I would support a change in my attitude if the Board of Health would change the regulations. In other words, to be more flexible and more realistic in terms of their approach. I don't know where that stands. My understanding, my general understanding is that we're making that attempt as we stand here. I'd like to see that personally completed because I think that's a reasonable and realistic thing to do. Thank you much, Mr. Moderator.
Speaker on my left.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to the body, Bob Brady, Precinct 6. I rise in opposition of further study. Ladies and gentlemen, we have studied nitrogen for years now. This issue is about a standard that is, by all expert accounts, unrealistic and cannot be met. Now, whether you agree with that or not, listen to the experts. Don't listen to the Clean Water Committee, because the Clean Water Committee, within 24 hours of a presentation of a 40-page document that many of us, 40 or 50 of us, spent 6 or 7 months developing, within 24 hours came forward with a bylaw, by the way, which we don't even need a bylaw. We need regulations. This is about managing our environment with regulations under the authority of the Board of Health. Not the Clean Water Committee, not the Board of Selectmen, not us. This is a Board of Health issue. We don't need bylaws. What we do need, though, are realistic standards with measures that can be met with the science and the technology. This bylaw does not do that. I encourage you to defeat further study and repeal the bylaw. If the AG does in fact throw it out, they throw it out. All of this is moot. But if they don't, at least the Board of Health will be able to develop regulations that will work and should work for the region, not just Wareham.
Just so you understand where we stand, we're trying to give all people who haven't spoken on this article or the amendment yet a chance to speak. So I'm going to recognize Mr. Sweat.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. I haven't spoken on the amendment yet.
Duly noted. You may proceed.
Thank you. Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. I don't know where to start, but as far as the comments on the Finance Committee, you don't see any financial analysis, any financial numbers, or anything else. It's a political statement. It's opinion, and should not be allowed as far as the Finance Committee is concerned, in my opinion. Secondly, the previous speaker, who has great knowledge in nitrogen issues, said not to listen to
Point of order.
State your point.
I'd like to, I can't quote the charter, but I do believe the Finance Committee is duly appointed to review all articles and report, and that's exactly what we did.
That's not a point of order, that's a statement.
May I continue?
You may continue.
The experts in this area did not say that nitrogen net zero is not obtainable. That is an out-and-out lie. As a matter of fact, nitrogen net zero has been implemented by the state in Plymouth. The development's called River Run, and it was established by A.D. Makepeace. Again, I support further study. Remember, this is all money, whether it's your money or the developer's money. Whose fair share to clean up nitrogen? It's got all smoke and mirrors in front of you, but it all comes down to the money. Thank you.
Speaker on my right.
Jeff Sweat, Precinct 1. I confess to being saddened by this debate. I voted for the bylaw that is now, we're now being asked to rescind, with the full knowledge that it might very well be premature, it might very well be flawed, but that it represented the spirit of what I wanted for Wareham. I would have hoped someone would have come back to amend, perhaps, the flaws, to correct the flaws, but the idea of rescinding it is, as I said, saddens me. I have a question for, through you, Mr. Moderator, to either the chairman of the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator. If this bylaw is rescinded, does a mandate exist for the health agent and the Board of Health to in fact develop regulations to bring forward so that we can address what I think was the spirit of this, the concerns and the spirit of this body just 6 months ago?
To answer the question.
I think it was stated earlier that if we do go along with rescinding this, that the Board of Health will still continue to work to see what they can do for regulations to get us as close to what we are trying to achieve.
No. Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying, but I guess it's one thing to hope that it will occur. It's another thing to be sure that it will occur. I'm comfortable with the idea of getting rid of something that, as long as I know somebody is going to act to bring something back to us that will honor the spirit of what was passed just 6 months ago. So I guess I'm looking for something definitive that will tell me that the health agent is being directed to come back to this body. Is that a fact?
To answer the question.
Mr. Moderator, through you to the speaker. The Board of Health is charged by statute with the ability to create these regulations. with or without a mandate, they can do this. Will they be mandated to do it? No. However, they're currently mandated to do it, and it's a very difficult thing to do because of all the questions that surround the specific mandate in the bylaw. So without the bylaw, they can still create and enforce regulations, but there will not be a mandate.
Thank you.
Speaker on my left.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move the question. Second.
We have to move the question on the amendment. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Good. So this is to move the question on the amendment. It requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No. Motion passes by 2/3 vote. We will now come to vote on the amendment. This requires a majority vote. This is for further study, because this is a highly debated concept. I'm going to ask before we do a count, if while you guys voice, I'd also like a double, just pop your card up with your voice. It just tells me out. We'll just follow all the same procedures other than that. So all in favor, say aye and raise your card. Yes. Can you step to the microphone for your point of order?
Could you please repeat the motion?
The motion is the proposed amendment by Mr. Donahue for further study of Article 42. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion fails.
Point of order, I'd like to count, Mr. Moderator.
I would just say I'd want to count. If you have 7 people with you to rise. All right, then we'll go to a count. Has everybody concluded counting, tellers or so? No, still counting? Please raise your cards if you are in favor of further study. Further study. Is the counting concluded? All right. Can I have section 1, please?
Section 1(8).
Section 2.
Section 2, 25.
Section 3.
33.
And section 4.
13, 1, 3.
All opposed, please raise your cards. Can I have section 1?
Section 1, 2626.
26. Section 2.
24.
Section 3.
52.
And section 4.
2929.
We have 131 in the negative, 79 in the affirmative. The motion fails. We will now return to the main motion. Is there a motion to move the question? I hear a second. All in favor of moving the question?
Aye.
All opposed? The question is moved. We will now have a vote on the article before us, Article 42. It requires a majority vote.
Mr. Moderator, point of order.
If you are in favor of repealing the article, then your vote will be yes. Repealing the bylaw, your vote will be yes. And if you are against repealing the bylaw, your vote will be no. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The motion fails. Proceed. Tellers to your positions, please. We will be taking a count. All in favor, please raise your cards.
You in favor or not in favor? You're in favor. So,
You're appealing it. You want to appeal it by I don't even. Attorney General.
Can I have section 1, please?
2525.
Can I have section 2?
16.
Can I have section 3?
48.
And section 4?
2929.
All opposed, please raise your cards.
this is in opposition to 42.
Can I have section 1, please?
13, 3.
Section 2?
33.
Section 3?
40, 40.
And section 4?
14, 4.
We have 118 in the affirmative, 100 in the negative. The motion passes by a majority vote.
Okay, now I have to figure out how to lower this microphone, and that is one time that I will agree to allowing applause. I think he did a fine job in being up here for the first time. Thank you, Joe. Madam Clerk. I just also want to acknowledge that our harbor master is here. So he wasn't here at the time of roll call, but he is here. Article number 20. May I have a motion?
Madam Moderator, I move the town vote to rescind the town clerk's passport revolving fund authorized by Article 18 of the 2010 Spring Annual Town Meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. To speak to the article?
Good evening, Madam Moderator, through you to the body. The reason why I'm requesting this be rescinded, the Boston Passport Agency has set new regulations for town clerks who issue passports. We now have to have a person that does not have access to birth certificates. They're afraid that we'll produce certificates and allow people to get false passports. So we have to have a whole window, staff, office, and the town just isn't set up for that. So that's the reason we have to rescind it.
May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen on Article 20 voted favorable action 5-0-0.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Finance Committee and the recommendation?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 8-0, 1 abstaining. The explanation, this article authorizes the rescission of the existing revolving fund account for issuing passports. Since the town clerk's office no longer issues passports, the revolving fund is no longer required.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 20? If not, I will call for the vote. This calls for a majority vote. All those in favor of rescinding the town clerk's passport revolving fund authorized by Article 18 of the 2010 spring annual town meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Article 2 is before us.
Madam Moderator, I move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and/or Town Administrator to apply for, accept, and enter into contracts from time to time for the expenditure of any funds allotted to or otherwise available to Wareham by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the U.S. government under any state or federal grant program or activity.
Do I hear a second? Have a second to speak to the article? Okay, this is a routine article that is on the annual warrant every year. Is there anything to be said to Article 2?
This isn't
Okay.
included.
May I call for the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Oh, the Board of Selectmen voted on Article 2, favorable action 500.
And may I have the vote and the recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action 800.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 2? Selectman Holmes.
Madam Moderator, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time. I would like to speak to the article, however. As a taxpayer and a member of the Board of Selectmen, I would actually like to change some of the wording on this at the appropriate time.
You
I could make
would
an
like to make
amendment.
an amendment?
I'd like to do that, if I could. I'd like to amend Article 2 to read, I move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator, subject to public notice and a formal vote of the Board of Selection before accepting and entering into contracts.
Do you have that in writing?
I will write it down, Madam Moderator. I don't have it now, right now.
Do I have a second?
Okay, thank you. Madam Moderator, the reason I rise for this is, and I'm not including any of my colleagues here or Mr. Andrews, no disrespect is intended. However, in true transparency, we would not give either the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator individual authority to enter into contracts when most of these grants and applications have to come before town meeting. I understand that there are times when contracts are applied for or grants are applied for, and there are deadlines when we have to accept them that may not fall within the time frame of our town meetings. And so my recommendation is that we require the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen to take a formal vote, which does two things. One, it gives public notice because that vote on that grant would be in our minutes, and they are posted prior to any meetings. And it would also give the entire Board of Selectmen an opportunity to vote on those. Many times in these areas, we look for a consensus among the Board of Selectmen via polling or phone calls. And all I'm recommending to the body is that the town take that a little bit of a step further and actually ask for a public notice in a meeting and a formal vote of the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Selectman Holmes, if I could have that in writing, please. Anything further to be said on my right?
Dominic Camerano, Onset, Mass. You know,
I do agree to, you know, a vote to enter into a contract, but the vote just to apply for a contract seems a little overkill to me. You know, an application doesn't mean anything, just that we did apply for something. To go through all that, vote and everything just to apply seems wrong to me.
That's duly noted, Madam Moderator. I actually made that motion to accept and enter into contracts. I didn't use the word apply. I was going to scratch that in my motion. Right.
Gentleman on my right.
Excuse me, perhaps I'm making the same point. The word accept is also in the language here. It isn't just to apply. So I think Mr. Holmes's amendment tries to address that particular issue, the word accept or acceptance.
Is there anything further to be said? Selectman Schneider?
Madam Moderator, I question whether or not the amendment would be in compliance with Section 4-2 of the Charter, powers and duties, and would therefore require a charter change. Or more specifically, paragraph in, that the town administrator shall be responsible for the negotiation of all contracts involving any subject within his jurisdiction, including the negotiation with the town employees over wages, hours, and other terms and conditions of employment. All such contracts as may be proposed by him shall be subject to final approval and execution by the Board of Selectmen.
So it is in compliance.
It's, right.
Yeah. That's what he's saying.
To answer, Mr. Schneider?
I would question, I guess, is this getting involved in the day-to-day? And I would actually have to ask council.
Council to respond.
Madam Moderator, through to the previous speaker in the meeting, if I can just read 4.2N out loud. He shall be responsible for the negotiation of all contracts involving any subject within his jurisdiction. So the first question is applying for grants and so forth within his jurisdiction. And I would have to say, in part it is. Enter into contracts from time to time for the expenditure of any funds allotted to or otherwise available to Wareham by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the U.S. government. That would not be within the town administrator's exclusive jurisdiction. In my opinion, the amendment would not conflict with the charter. The reason being that, number one, this has been an annual article. And if it did conflict with the charter, I would like to think that it would never have been here in the first place. Granted, that may not be the most powerful reasoning. Number two, the ability to expend funds is subject to Chapter 30B, and it takes a vote of town meeting to, at some point, delegate the authorizing power to enter into contracts. This vote would be an authorization by the meeting for the town administrator to enter into a particular type of contracts. And for those reasons, I believe that it would not conflict with subsection N. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I believe the question was directed at the amendment, not the article.
And that's what I was addressing.
Could you ask council?
And that's what council is addressing, is the amendment.
Okay, that wasn't very clear.
He was addressing the amendment.
Right, I understand that, but I just want to make, if I don't understand, and we don't, the three of us don't understand, maybe others don't understand.
If you want.
Could, Madam Moderator?
Council will readdress it.
Thank you.
If I was insufficiently clear to anyone, I apologize. My comments were directed with respect to the amendment. The question posed to me had to do with whether the amendment posed a conflict with the charter. In answering that question, my answer was no.
Thank you. Does that make it clear? On my right.
Yes, thank you.
The amendment read, because I believe that what the, Mr. Holmes said, and then one of the speakers on the Finance Committee, I'm not sure exactly which way it said, so if we could just have it read, please.
Point of order. Name. Thank you.
State your
Brenda
name.
Ekstrom,
Thank you.
Precinct 2.
Thank you. Mr. Selectman Holmes's amendment would read, well, if you would like to, Selectman Holmes, that's fine, if you would like to reread it.
Yeah, basically, it's just to see if the town will vote to
The mic's not
authorize.
on. Hold it up close.
Steve Holmes, onset. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator. Basically, what I'm doing in sentence 1 is removing the word or. So that any of these agreements that are entered into between town meetings are a combination of effort of the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen. We have no issue with applying for and enter, and then I did make a correction. Oh, where is it? Oh, you have it now. Applying, certainly, I have no issue with that. Entering into these contracts would also require that Board of Selectmen and the town administrator.
So to make that clear, the article would read, I move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to apply for, accept, and enter into contracts from...
Well, I would, you don't need both bodies to, I'm not trying to restrict the applying or the accepting. I'm trying to restrict the entering into contracts on those grants. Certainly the board or any department head is free to apply, but the entering into the final agreements should be done by both parties.
I don't,
Steve, can you, Steve, Selectman Holmes? Selectman Holmes?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Would you read it so that Matt could put it up on the screen exactly what your intent is? I think that's where the confusion is.
Okay, I'm very sorry. I'm trying not to be confusing. I move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and we remove the word or. The town administrator to enter, take out apply for, accept, and. There you go. That makes better sense. To enter into contracts from time to time for the expenditure of any funds. That would be correct.
But then it's not giving him permission to apply for grants.
Right.
Or accept.
Well, Madam Moderator, the town administrator, Board of Selectmen, anyone's allowed to apply for grants at any time.
no.
No, we have to authorize it, Selectman Holmes. So we need to have,
To apply for a grant, Mr.
Yes.
Andrews and any of his department heads have done that many times over the past. They didn't have to have permission to apply for a grant.
hang on just one second. I move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to enter into contracts from time to time. Okay, what if we added, I move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to enter into contracts from time to time and further.
No. Madam Moderator? Well, if I may, this is his amendment, not yours, and
I'm just trying to help him out, Mrs. Ekstrom. Please
But-
bear with us. Mrs. Ekstrom, please. If we could have, let's just give Selectman Holmes a chance to put his motion in proper order. Let's leave it to him.
might have been nice to be prepared if you were a selectman.
Yeah.
Then why is this even? This is changing to or. This changes to or. I don't want that.
Another
Both parties
$118
should be
per
agreeing on these things. This changes it to or. It's the big word.
Selectman Holmes, so you,
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
are you writing your motion?
That's clear.
That's your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Selectman Holmes's motion is I move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator to enter into contracts from time to time for the expenditure of any funds allotted to or otherwise available to Wareham by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the U.S. government under any state or federal grant program or activity. That is Mr. Holmes's motion.
Point of information.
State your point.
Irvin Russell, Precinct 6 of Wareham. Did I not hear the impression, I got the impression when it was initially presented that there was expected to be a review of the board or the board voting fully to take the action to ratify the contract and therefore giving the public an opportunity to see the contract. I got the impression that I heard that initially.
You did hear it, Mr. Russell, but I believe that Mr. Selectman Holmes has made his motion otherwise. The motion that Selectman Holmes has made is what is before you on the screen.
Omitting the vote of the Board of Selectmen and the full vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
That needed to take place, so.
Yes. On my right.
Thank you. Brenda Ekstrom, Precinct 2. I believe that previously someone said as far as entering into the contracts, applying for and all of that, I thought that that was the town administrator who is the chief administrative officer, and there are things in the charter that he...
Point of order.
State your point.
Dan Bezenet, Precinct 4. I believe that what Mr. Holmes had verbally presented as the amendment, and it was seconded, is not what appears before us. And so I would question if there is a second to this written amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your point is well taken. Mr. Holmes, would you like to withdraw your original verbal motion?
Withdraw it? I'm sorry, Madam Moderator, would you clarify that? You want me to
Would you
withdraw
like to
what?
withdraw your previous verbal motion, which had included subject to public notice, which there had been a second on?
No, that was in my explanation, it wasn't in the motion. My explanation was that, to answer the question through you to the person who asked, my point of public notification was by the Board of Selectmen voting. If the town administrator came to us and said, we have a grant for 10 vehicles, but it only pays for the first year, the town is going to be on the hook for the next 15 years, and it comes up in August. My point is, he he or she.
Okay, so your motion
Right.
was, did
So
not include that,
by
that was
the
just your
Board of
explanation.
Selectmen having to vote, because before, the town administrator could do that all on his own.
Okay, I just
Or
want to
her
get back
own.
to the point. Thank you, Selectman Holmes. The
So my
point,
point was, by the Board of Selectmen voting, it's on an agenda, it's on a public notice.
I understand. I'm just responding to his point of order that your original motion that you made for public
Right,
intent,
thank
that was only by way of explanation and was not your original motion. The motion up on the screen is the original motion.
So was there a second on that? I guess that was the point of information that was being asked.
Yes, there was. State your point.
I disagree. I do not believe there was a second to this motion.
We have a second. Thank you.
Point of information,
On my left?
Leo Bro, Precinct 1. Madam Moderator, originally the article before the amendment, I believe you stated this was a normal motion that came up every year. And Selectman Holmes stated that the administrator or the board could apply for any grant at any time. And wasn't that because this motion was passed last year, that they could do that anytime during the year?
Mhm.
And if we don't pass the original motion, then they cannot apply for a grant.
That's right.
That's correct.
Can anybody answer that question?
Generally, the administrator of the town can apply for a grant at any time.
Even if that original motion was never brought up and passed?
I believe so. Anybody can apply for a grant at any time. I could apply for a grant at any time. On my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you, for a point of information, it occurs to me in reviewing the budget that we have many ongoing grants through the police department, through the education, for roads. I would like clarification through you to the town administrator, how this will impact the ongoing grants that we get on a yearly basis. I have serious concerns about changing the powers of this article.
To answer the question?
It was to the town administrator.
Would you mind, through you, Madam Moderator, would you mind just...
Hold on, Ms. Selectman Holmes. I want to see if the town administrator would like to answer. To answer the questions, Mr. Andrews.
Madam Moderator, through you to the body and to the experienced member of the Finance Committee. This is a housekeeping item, and as such, since I've been here, has been passed without any question. If there are additional procedures that need to be followed, I'm happy to look at them and comply. It's a matter by which I think we handle, as one speaker said, our day-to-day activities. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you.
May I continue?
Yes.
Thank you. As I said previously, I'm concerned with limiting the powers for the ongoing programs that we already have. I think this is interference in the day-to-day administrative duties. And though I appreciate the fact that we want open and transparency, I think it could all be discussed at meetings and be on the agenda anyway without changing the article as it's put before us. I urge you to vote down the amendment and vote in favor of the article.
And I apologize, Mrs. Ekstrom. We had an interruption for point of order, and I did not get back to you. I apologize to you.
That is quite all right. I would just concur with the member of the Finance Committee to vote this down. While the moderator is correct that she herself can apply for grants, she cannot apply for grants on behalf of the town, which is what the town administrator would be doing and or the Board of Selectmen would be doing. And if the Board of Selectmen would like to hold the town administrator with such close reins, they merely need to establish a policy that says before anything that the town administrator applies for, that he has to get approval from you. That would be a policy issue. But this here, which is a housekeeping article, has been on, it is required that this body has to authorize you. You people have no greater power than what this body gives you. And we, with the traditional article, we are allowing you to apply for, accept, and enter into contracts on our behalf. That's all this is. If you want to make a policy with the town administrator, the Board of Selectmen has every right to do that. And as with the chairman of the board, who is the one who sets the agenda, he would put those on the agenda. So there isn't, if you want transparency, it's up to you to give us transparency. But to change this and to have us limit what we are authorizing the town administrator to do on our behalf is not fair. So please vote it down.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said? If not, the vote will come on Selectman Holmes's amendment to authorize the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to enter into contracts from time to time for the expenditure of any funds allotted to or otherwise available to Wareham by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the U.S. government under any state or federal grant program or activity. The vote is on the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. We now have the main motion before you, which is to move to authorize the Board of Selectmen and/or the town administrator to apply for, accept, and enter into contracts from time to time for the expenditure of any funds allotted to or otherwise available to Wareham by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or to the U.S. government under any state or federal grant program or activity. Is there anything further to be said? If not, the vote is on the original motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The article passes by majority. Madam Clerk, next article. Article
Excuse me.
41.
The moderator, point of information, they didn't change it to and/or. I just want to make sure that, because you say what it is what we're voting on the screen, that it wasn't reverted back to the original. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that.
Right, the original motion was and/or. What was that number? 41. Article 41.
I got to rally and give a nice clear answer.
This is a petition article. Mrs. Ekstrom, motion.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I move that the town repeal Article 5, Section 580, wind energy facilities in its entirety, 500, 581, 582, 583, 583.1, 583.2, 583.3, 583.4, 583.5, 583.6, 583.7, 583.8, 583.9, 583.10, 583.11, 584, 584 sick, 585.1, 585.2, 585.3, 585.4, 585.5, 585.6, 585.7, 585.8, 585.9, 585.10, 585.11, 585.12, 585.13, and that the moderator shall establish a wind energy review committee consisting of 7 members and to be appointed no later than June 1st, 2011, consisting of 2 citizens at large, the town planner, 1 member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, 1 member of the Conservation Commission, 1 member of the Board of Assessors, and the Director of Inspectional Services to do a complete study of the effects of wind turbines on the town of Wareham. This study, with recommendations, shall be completed and submitted to the annual Springtown meeting of 2012 in writing. Recommendations shall be part of the report, but no bylaw shall be submitted for placement on the warrant in conjunction with the report.
Do I have a second? To speak to the article?
Thank you. I put this article in, whether you're in favor or in opposition to the wind energy facilities. I think that the town has to do its due diligence on this. And as we were discussing with previous articles, whether there has been enough studying and everything, this article came to this body with 1 public hearing that was held by the planning board the same night that the town meeting was going on. It was presented by the school committee, and it was told to this body that the school committee needed this zoning bylaw so that the school committee could look into putting up a turbine out in this area so that it would give electricity to the high school, the middle school, town hall, and the multi-service center. That was how it was presented to this body. That is not what we got. And as we have seen, there are many questions about this, and I think that I don't know if I'm in favor or against wind turbines. What I know, though, is that we need to understand how it impacts our property value, how it impacts the well-being of our community as far as the environment, how it's going to impact and where we should put them in. And so I would just like us to repeal it. We do have one article or one applicant right now. It will not affect that applicant or their situation. It would be just moving forward to stop what we have, because there are no limits on it as far as how many can be done. And I think that the town needs to just take a step back and realize what we are setting up for the future. And I think that these people, I think if the moderator, because it is a committee that will be appointed by this body and to do a legislative act, I think the moderator can appoint or should be the one to appoint. And with these experts that we, either have had years of expertise or work for us and have, whether it's volunteer or working, that they should be able to come back to this body and give us a better assessment of it.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the vote of the Board of Selectmen was favorable action, 3-0.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Finance Committee and the recommendation? Your mic's not on.
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 601.
Thank you. May I have a report from the Planning Board, please?
Alan Slavin, clerk. We have a couple of issues that I think we need to address to you, Madam Moderator, through you, and also the Town Council. We have the potential of a defective notice on this as far as the actual hearing. And I think it's been discussed already, and also the idea of pushing this back and tabling it to the May meeting portion of this town meeting. So we have proper notice. The Planning Board just recently voted to go ahead and reapply for the hearing, excuse me. Yeah. Basically a motion to lay this on the table.
So because we have had a defective notice, we cannot act on this article, and therefore the Planning Board would like to make a motion to table this article?
Table it and bring it up back when we open the town meeting again in May.
To May 23rd?
Correct. We've basically been given the possibility that the Attorney General might not accept whatever gets voted here because the notice was May. When we made the notice, it was April. It was Monday, April 19th. It should have been Tuesday, April 19th.
Thank you. Do we have a second to Mr. Slavin's amendment? We have Town Council address this.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker and to the meeting. There are two different statutes at play on this. One is Chapter 48, Section 5, which relates to notices of hearing, and the other is Chapter 48, Section 6, which makes a planning board report a condition precedent of acting on a zoning proposal such as this. As to the notice, before the planning board holds a hearing, they're required to publish a notice 14 and 7 days before the proposed hearing. In this particular case, the first notice referenced a particular day of the week, and it also referenced a particular date. The date and the day in the hearing notice did not match. The second notice was consistent. It properly referenced both the day and the date. The planning board went ahead and issued a third notice, as a precautionary measure. However, that notice would not count towards the 14 and 7-day requirement of Chapter 48, Section 5, because that hearing was held approximately 4 or 5 days before the meeting. So there is a potential defect in the first notice because of the discrepancy of day and date. There is no case law on the question. I believe that the notice is probably effective. However, I have checked the question with the Attorney General's office, and while the Attorney General said that the notice defect was minor in nature, she was not willing to rule on whether she would accept or reject the article based on the described minor defect. She suggested that if the defect was troublesome to the meeting and if the article was controversial, that the article be tabled until a subsequent meeting so that the proper hearings could be held. The second issue, as I referenced, is Chapter 48, Section 6. Having a planning board report before you act on this is a condition precedent. If there is no planning board report, you may not act, and this article can only be dismissed. I don't know whether there is a planning board report or not. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, to you, there is no report.
There is no report from the planning board, so therefore we are unable to take action on this article.
Yes, I did.
Table till May 23rd.
We still laid this on the table.
I would accept a motion to table this to May 23rd in that case.
Thank you.
I have a second motion before us to table Article 41 to May 23rd. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Article 41 is on the table for May 23rd by majority vote.
Got a shot. No.
Article 3. May I have a motion on Article 3?
Madam Moderator, I move to authorize the treasurer collector. My apologies. Madam Moderator, I move to authorize the treasurer collector to enter into compensating balance agreements for fiscal 2012 as allowed by GLC 44, Section 53F.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. To speak to the article? Town Administrator, Mr. Andrews.
Madam Moderator, this is a housekeeping matter for the treasurer collector, and I would urge favorable recommendation and vote thereof. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen was favorable action 5-0-0.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee voted favorable action 8-0-0.
Is there anything to be said on Article 3? Hearing nothing, I will call for the vote. Vote will be to move to authorize the treasurer collector to enter into compensating balance agreements for fiscal year 2012 as allowed by General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 39. Article 39 is the noise. Again, I believe this is a petition article. Mr. Pasevich, I'd like to present the motion.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to lay this on the table until the proponent returns.
Have a motion to lay it on the table until the proponent returns. Oh, here he comes.
I'm sorry. The lottery caught me. My name is Eddie Pasevich, and I'm from Precinct 6. I move that the town vote to amend Division 3, Article 2, anti-noise regulations by adding these changes identified in bold print as printed in the warrant.
Do I have a second? Second. To speak to the article?
Could we have the article up on the screen? Basically, what we did here is, this is a petition article. The entire old noise amendment is in fact in this article. The only changes are those that you see in bold print. Everything that's in regular print is from the old bylaw. And can you make that out? You can make it out a lot easier in the printed warrant article, which shows that. And basically what we did is update the noise article. Here we go. Okay, as you can see, anything in bold is new and added. Everything that's on regular print is part of the old article. In updating the article, you could be pulled over for having your radio on loud. But if your vehicle had glass packs on it, was making a lot of noise, you couldn't be pulled over according to this anti-noise law. We corrected it by adding, as you can see up there, motor vehicles, boats, or conveyances. There's also some other changes in there which update the requirements of this bylaw to be presented to renters in town so they know what the laws are regarding noise. In addition, it creates a quiet time between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And that quiet time is defined as any noise that can be heard off the property is in fact a prima facie case if it's occurring between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., which is right there in bold. The rest of the article remains the same. We updated this viewing, and I won't take credit for it, so I just happen to be the first person that signed this, but by reviewing a number of anti-noise regulations, bylaws in various towns around us, we cut and pasted and added and put this together. This reflects an average of what all of the other bylaws around us deal with as far as noise, and it's just an update to it.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 4-1-0.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Finance Committee and their recommendation?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 5-1-1.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said on the article? Selectman Winslow?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I was the dissenting vote of the Board of Selectmen. My concerns are how we would enforce such a bylaw. If there's a noise complaint, and there are issues in town where there are problems, and the town administrator in conjunction with the police chief and the police department have been addressing those particular areas. Do we Do I call the police when there's a loud car with its exhaust dragging at 1 o'clock in the morning, and by the time they get there, then, you know, the car's more than 150 feet away? I mean, it's kind of like they have to luck out by, like any other crime fighting. So my concern is with the enforcement, and also with the quiet time hours. We're a seasonal community, and people come and they do a lot of things, and they often have weekend gatherings, get-togethers, celebrations of sorts. So I think we just need to think through how we go about enforcing it, and perhaps the police chief can enlighten us as to how big of a problem this truly is. Thank you.
Chief Stanley?
Yes, Chief Stanley from the Police Department. First of all, is it a problem? Yes, it is. Especially for the full-time residents of the community, I think that this is a great tool to give the police department. Listen, police work is discretionary. We need to depend on the men and women of the organization to use discretion in how they enforce the law. And the way you use discretion is common sense. So you have to have faith in the people carrying a gun and a badge to use common sense. This is another tool in the toolbox to assist us, especially those who live here year-round, with keeping this a community which is civil and can be quiet at night and so forth. There's another article also that deals with something like this. So I think it is a tool, and I fully support it. As far as the enforcement aspect goes, again, it's common sense, and there are other laws in the book also that come into play that assist us, such as disturbing the peace and so forth. But this, I think this is a good alternative.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right? I'm sorry. Okay, gentleman on my right.
Paul Renta, Precinct 5. I have questions about this just a little bit. If we live in a town, and if you take a look at High Street and local neighborhoods, we could have houses that are no further apart than where I am and where the board is sitting now. If you have a neighbor that may have, unfortunately, an attitude adjustment problem, and your windows are open and they can hear your radio and whatnot, that gives them the opportunity to call, because I'm less than 150 feet, I can hear you. Now I can understand noise, and I can understand being in an area of your town where you have the hustle and bustle of streets, and then you might be in an area of the town where there is no noise. Now, where I live, we don't have a lot of traffic. Now, what's undue noise, nuisance? Because I can hear the highway, I can hear trucks bouncing back and forth. Or, now, does this allow me, unfortunately, for my neighbor who works for a living, because when we do work, this is a working town, that I can stop him from starting his truck to go to work? I think it's a Pandora's box that we may get into. And I understand if we have restaurants or we have functions that goes on, but I think we have to be very careful how we deal with this, because this could be difficult in the long run.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right on the stage, Mr. Camerano.
I just have one, if someone can answer my question. Is 11 o'clock p.m. changed from the original article? Is this new, the time, 11 p.m.? And if so, what was the old time?
If someone has any answer as to what the old bylaw was, in the bylaw before us, it changes it to 11.
There was no issue with quiet time in the old bylaw. This is brand new. This is being added. The old bylaw did not have a quiet time.
Thank you, Mr. Pasevich.
So there was no time then. It was just an amendment for quiet time.
There was no time, through you, Madam Moderator. There was no time.
I fully support it and I'm for it. Just wondering if 11 is just a little too early. You know what I mean? It is a summer town. People do come here to enjoy themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. On my left.
Irvin Russell, Precinct 6. I would make an amendment to this motion, and I would amend it to further study.
Do I have a second? To speak to your amendment, Mr. Russo?
Speak to the amendment. Yeah, there's a lot involved in this whole, this motion, and I think that this would be a rash action to embark on these controls. The police chief expressed the fact that it'd be a tool in the toolbox of the enforced public servants. Yet, just the challenging of an individual, if he was to get entrapped by one of these charge and have to appeal to the courts. Now the state has enforced an appeal fine, and it could be costly just to address, like the gentleman just expressed, a discontented neighbor that wants to cause you just some aggravation by calling the cops and saying you're too loud. I think we need to look into this more and possibly express more to the community that self-control might be the better way of dealing with this rather than enforce this. And I would ask support for this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Gentleman on my right.
Thomas Bakey, Precinct 3. I had a couple of issues, and I will support Mr. Russell's motion. I'd like to say that my narrow reading of this thing really doesn't address the issue of loud mufflers and other conveyances, other noises that have been addressed. My reading says, to cause any suffering or allow unnecessary loud, excessive or unusual noises in the operation of any radio, phonograph, or other musical sounding making device or instrument, or reproducing device or instrument, or in the playing of any band, orchestra, musician, or groups of musicians. And if you read on, it's talking about music sound. It's not talking about glass-packed mufflers. It's not talking about motorcycles with loud mufflers, which brings up my second point. If somebody has a properly licensed and inspected vehicle, and that has passed inspection, and a neighbor doesn't particularly like how loud the muffler is, and files a complaint, that person could be cited when in fact the person has a legitimately, legally titled, licensed, and inspected vehicle. Which comes to my third point, which is the point that I brought up the last time we talked about sound ordinances, and that is we need a decibel level. We need to set a decibel level for what is an unacceptable level of noise so that the police can use their discretion, but they also have a benchmark to say, you're above this decibel level. An average common person would say, this is an unacceptably loud noise. And it would do away with the concerns that people have about somebody having a window open and a neighbor overhearing a radio playing in the living room or such and such at some particular point in time. So I agree with Mr. Russell that this motion should be moved for further study. Thank you.
Thank you. On my right.
Bonnie Gattuli. I rise in opposition to further study at this point. A lot of people spent some time working on this, and the Finance Committee since spent some time reading it and studying it, as did the Board of Selectmen. I don't really care for this whole further study thing. I think that we need to make a decision here, either vote it up or vote it down.
Thank you. Selectman Schneider?
I also rise in opposition to the amendment or the motion for further study, and I would urge you to support the original article. This language is pretty standard. This article, noise bylaws like these are implemented throughout the state, and they're implemented every day in apartment complexes. And the chief is correct. This is offering another tool to our police officers and increasing our quality of life in the town of Wareham. As far as setting a decibel level, you know, we rely on our police officers every day. They make judgments, life and death, or as simple as a ticket. They can write you a citation, or they can give you a fine. I think it's perfectly within the scope of their duties to make a determination as to whether or not the noise level coming from these items is acceptable or it isn't. And the key word really in the first paragraph is unnecessary. Unnecessary loud excessive noise. So I would urge you to defeat the motion for further study and support the original article.
Thank you. On my right.
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. The first paragraph on the screen, the first sentence, it talks about motor vehicles, boats, conveyances, but in the last sentence, it only says 150 feet from a motor vehicle. I was thinking it would be all three forms of motor to be consistent.
No, we have an amendment on the floor for further study, so the
Oh, I'm
issue
sorry.
before us is further study.
Then I table this until we go back to the original.
On my left.
Yes, my name is Donna Ashley, Precinct 6. One of the things that kind of sold it on me as to where I'm at is when Chief Stanley said that it's another tool for them. I think we need to give them whatever tools they need. I live in Shangri-La, and it can get noisy down there quite often. But I also have to realize that, you know, there's a balance, but this is good. I mean, we're not asking people to, I know some people are on vacation, they come, it's a town where they can enjoy themselves, and most of us aren't going to say too much. I mean, I have neighbors, and if they're going to have a party, we're going to be understanding. This is excessive, and this goes against, and there are some places. You know, I don't like to bother police for things, and so I won't call. I'll just put my head under a pillow, and I think most people probably do that too. But I think this does give the police a chance to do their job maybe a little easier, and we need to do that. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in town, and we want our town to be the best town it can be. I don't want to infringe, but you know, I don't think this is being too infringible. Most of us, if it's 11:15 or 11:30 at night, and we know our neighbors are having a nice party or they're having a reunion or something, I'm not going to say anything. But there are some times that people don't care what other people are trying to do, and we are a working community, and a lot of us need to get to bed to get up early. So I think that this is a good article. I think anything that helps our police department to do their job is a good article, and I urge to keep it as it is and not further study. But let's pass it. Let's give the opportunity for our town to stay how we all want it, and I think we'll all be understanding of people.
Thank you. Mr. Camerano, did you want to speak? Selectman Begley?
I rise to ask the body to defeat the amendment and support the article. I agree with the previous speakers that this is about unnecessary noise. We all work here. Obviously, we're permanent residents. We absolutely understand that we depend on the tourist industry, and we're all very understanding when it comes to reasonable noise. It's the 4 o'clock in the morning when those of us that work have to be up at 6. It's the unnecessary noise. Please defeat the amendment and support the original article.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on the amendment? If not, the amendment now comes before you for further study of Article 39. All those in favor of further study, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The amendment fails by a majority. We now have before us the original motion, which is to move that the town vote to amend Division 3, Article 2, anti-noise regulations by adding these changes identified in bold print as printed in the warrant. Mr. Pasevich?
Yes, I rise to make an amendment to this particular article. It's just brought to my attention. In the second paragraph, it says that it shall be unlawful for any person or persons being in control of a motor vehicle, boat, or conveyance to cause any unnecessary loud, excessive, or unusual noise in the operation of such vehicle, boat, or conveyance. The fact that the noise is plainly audible at a distance of 150 feet from the motor vehicle, and I would add boat or conveyance, just that boat or conveyance, from which it originates shall constitute a prima facie evidence of a violation of this bylaw.
Do we have a second to Mr. Pacevich's amendment? We have a second. Anything further to be said on the article with the amendment as the second paragraph had added boat or conveyance? Hearing no other discussion, I will now take a vote on Mr. Pacevich's amendment to amend the second paragraph by adding boat or conveyance after the word 150 feet from the motor vehicle, boat, or conveyance. All those in favor of Mr. Pacevich's amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment passes unanimously. It now becomes your main motion. All those in favor of Article 39 as amended, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Article 39 passes by a majority. Madam Clerk? Looks like we only have about 4 or 5 articles left. Article 38. Article 38 is a petitioned article. Mr. Curry.
Yes, Moderator, Steve Curry, Precinct 5. Petitioner of this article. I can read it or it's in the warrant. Let me put the glasses on here, Madam Moderator, so I can read my own writing here. Okay, to see if the town will vote to change the Town Charter Article 3, Section 3-5, Board of Assessors, subsection C. The following is to be inserted after the first sentence and prior to the second sentence. Prior to the appointment of Director of Assessment, I'm sorry, Matt, I know we spoke earlier, if you could put it thank you. This part is inserted after the first sentence, which basically gives the town administrator shall appoint a Director of Assessment for a term of 3 years and fix the director's compensation within the amount annually appropriated. And then add, prior to the appointment of a Director of Assessment, the position will be properly posted in Town Hall, trade publications, websites, and local media, news media. The posting will occur no later than 30 days after the vacancy of the position. An interviewing committee shall be formed, which will consist of a minimum of 3 members. At least 1 member shall be the member of the Board of Assessors, and the remaining members shall be determined by the hiring authority. These additional members will have knowledge of the position and qualifications needed to fill the position.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second, Mr. Curry?
Yes, we inserted this, and I've, being a member of the Board of Assessors, and I've spoken with the Board of Assessors, they're in agreement with me on this article. Recently, right now, the town does not have a Director of Assessment. That is being posted, and we're looking to fill that position. We had an assistant assessor who has left to go to a different town. So currently, we have neither a director nor an assistant assessor. Our primary assessor that we had, Mr. Rich Gonzalez, left last August to go to a different community. Our assistant was appointed as the interim. And on this year, on January 4th, our assistant was appointed to be the Director of Assessment. Unbeknownst to the Board of Assessors, we were notified of the same day in a letter asking for our input. The Board of Assessors, at the time of the Board of Assessors meeting, the board inquired if the job was posted as the selectman policy. And according to the charter, as read in the first line, the administrator shall appoint a director. Per the charter, this doesn't need to be posted or anything. The administrator can appoint a director of assessment. The Board of Assessors also had the same question as with the Board of Selectmen's policy that all jobs must be posted and advertised to be hired, superseded the charter. The Board of Assessors asked through the town administrator and to town council if this was accurate. And upon receiving word from town council that primarily the Board of Selectmen policies are just guidelines. Unless they're written into the charter, they're not enforceable. They're just guidelines of what helping along with the charter. And so what this allows is that after a director is left, we're requesting that the job be posted within 30 days that we can get a new director. Right now, the assessing department pretty much brings in about 65% of all income into the town. It deals with betterment records, deed records, real estate taxes, real estate assessment, motor vehicle, excise, boat excise, getting the tax rate set and the bills over to the collector. Currently, this is the first year in approximately 19 years that would had to go outside to use an outside vendor to do our revaluation. This is on an article on the special for $152,000. If we had someone in the director, we'd be doing this in-house as we had for the last 18 or 19 years, and we wouldn't need to spend this $152,000. So basically, we inserted this article to make sure that if there is a vacancy, there's a time frame set that we can get it posted, get a new director to make sure that the office runs efficiently and the finances continue to flow into the town. That's it, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. May I have a vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen vote on Article 38 was favorable action 500.
And may I have a vote of the Finance Committee in the recommendation?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 450, and their explanation was that the article seeks to change the town charter by inserting text outlining a procedure for hiring the Director of Assessment.
Thank you. This is a charter change, and this will require a 2/3 vote. On my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to offer an amendment. I'm a little bit concerned about the sentence that reads, "The remaining members shall be determined by the hiring authority." Who is the hiring authority? I thought it was the town administrator, so I'd like to offer an amendment to make sure that that's very clear, the hiring authority, instead of replace the words hiring authority with town administrator.
So as I understand your amendment, Mrs. Donahue, it would be prior to the appointment of a Director of Assessment, the position will be properly posted in Town Hall, trade publications, websites, and local news media. The posting will occur no later than 30 days after the vacancy of the position. An interviewing committee shall be formed which will consist of a minimum of 3 members. At least 1 member shall be a member of the Board of Assessors, and the remaining members shall be determined by the town administrator.
That's correct, Madam Moderator. I believe that the town administrator is the hiring authority, so it should be very clear.
Do we have a second on that?
Town administrator.
And we have a second. To speak to the amendment?
I think it pretty much speaks for itself. I don't just urge the body to make clarity in the article and not leave any loopholes for confusion. We've had issues before with appointing authorities and who is the appointing authority. If we say town administrator, then we know it's town administrator. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on the amendment? The amendment to this article only requires a majority vote. Your vote now will come on Article 38 as amended by Mrs. Donahue to add the word the town administrator in the second to the last sentence. So it would read, at least 1 member shall be a member of the Board of Assessors, and the remaining members shall be determined by the town administrator. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The The amendment passes by majority. This now becomes the main motion, and because it is a charter change, it does require a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It does pass by a 2/3 vote. Article 18.
Madam Moderator, through you, I'd like to see if the town would vote to accept provisions of MGLC 64L S 2A authorizing the imposition of a local option meal excise at the rate of 0.75% on the sale of restaurant meals originating within the town, or to do or to act in a manner related thereto.
Do I hear a second? Second. I have a second to speak to the article, Article 18. Mr. Andrews?
Madam Moderator, through you to the body, this is once again, as we talked about yesterday, one of the largest sources of recurring revenue. Matt, if you could just help us out. That is available. I do understand the sensitivity. Worked in economic development for 4 years. I do recognize that we're down to the, I heard the toolbox mentioned earlier, we're down to the bottom of the toolbox as it relates to recurring revenue. And, you know, once again, you can see that there's significant dollars involved with regards to adding this to the toolbox for budgeting purposes. I would like to also add that 9 other South Coast communities have grappled with this. It's not an easy question to dig into. Matt, I'm not sure if we have that up there, but we can show the other communities that have most recently, between 2009 and 2011, have had to really dig at this end of the toolbox. And if you look at some of the items that we've had to cut expenses, look at ways to reduce our costs, this recurring revenue source is out there to be at least looked at. That was the idea. And I think when the next frame, Matt, if you could just show, you know, if people are thinking that they're going to stay in their car and hop back on the highway and go to another spot or travel around the South Coast, particularly with gasoline prices these days, I just wanted to say to you that we just did a little model here that you'd spend more money trying to find a spot that didn't have some form of this meals tax available. Once again, I do understand the sensitivity. I have heard from business owners and restaurants. I'd like to think that we could look at this as a source of revenue going forward, particularly in the budget process that has been very difficult as of late. But that being said, I urge favorable recommendation for the body. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the vote of the Board of Selectmen, Article 18 was favorable action 0, 5 against, 0 abstain.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Finance Committee and their recommendation?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action, 5 in favor, 2 against. And this is an opportunity to share the tax burden with our summer visitors. We strongly recommend placing this income into our capital programs for the town and the schools.
Thank you. Gentlemen, am I right?
Jeff Sweat, Precinct 1. On behalf of my colleague Rhonda Vugan and myself, who both serve on the school committee and the ad hoc budget committee, I'd like to make the following amendment. Following the last word of the article, I would like to change the period to a comma. And it's already been taken care of. Thank you, Matt, but I'll read it. with all proceeds to be placed in a capital reserve fund to be withdrawn upon the recommendation of the Capital Planning Committee with the approval of town meeting voters.
I have a second. To speak to your motion, Mr. Sweat?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. What some people may not realize is that the town notes millions of dollars of depreciation on our assets every year, but we fail to fund it through the budget process. The result is we end up with the kind of problem that the Capital Planning Committee's report highlighted last night, which is millions of dollars of depreciated assets and no money to actually repair and replace them. This money that would be generated by this 0.75% tax on restaurant meals, in my opinion and in the opinion of my colleague, we believe it should be specifically designated to at least partially deal with this unfunded liability of depreciated assets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweat. I have a question for council. I believe that this is, the motion as originally presented was an acceptance of the statutes and that the money would have to flow into the general fund and then be appropriated. I'm not sure that your amendment may not require a special act of the legislature, so I would like to just ask council for his opinion.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, to you and to the previous speaker, this is a straightforward statutory acceptance. The statute does not contemplate a particular designation of the funds. However, there is another statute that addresses the question of where revenues such as this would have to go, and that's Chapter 44, Section 53, which provides that all funds received by the town must go into the general fund. There are certain exceptions to that rule, and they are created by statute or by special act. In my opinion, you could accomplish the intention of your motion through legislation, but you would not be able to do it in conjunction with the acceptance of this particular statute.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and through you to council. Are you suggesting that there is nothing town meeting could do in furtherance of getting that to the legislative body at the state level? In other words, is my amendment moot, or is it something constructive that could be done tonight in furtherance of that?
To answer the question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. To the previous speaker, if you were proposing to convert your motion into a petition for special legislation, that would raise questions about the scope of the article and whether what you were proposing was within the scope of the article. And that call is for the moderator to make rather than council, although council has an opinion. In terms of how to effectuate the purpose of what you wish to do without special legislation, what you could do, although I don't know that you could do it tonight, would be to get an estimate of the amount of revenue that would come in pursuant to this acceptance, and then at a subsequent town meeting, appropriate that money to a special fund. The problem with the motion as offered is that you're creating an automatic mechanism where dollar comes in, it automatically flows to this particular account. And because of Chapter 44, Section 53, that type of automatic transfer can't occur unless you have a special act. So with that statute in place, the money goes into the general fund, and then once it's in the general fund, it would be possible, pursuant to a budget article or a particular article that might be placed on the warrant, to set aside that money by an appropriation vote to the purpose for which you want to use it.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and to you, to council. In the interest of speed, I'll withdraw my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And the person that seconded, would you withdrawn? Thank you. Selectman Winslow.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make an amendment on this article for further study.
we have a section, second? I have a second. To speak to the amendment for further study, Ms. Selectman Winslow?
I think that at some point in time, this is going to be something that everybody's going to do, but it's not that way today. And in truth, it's an added tax on us because the year-round residents are those who support the restaurants in the winter. And I realize today that most of us probably make a little extra effort in the winter for our local restaurants because we know that they're struggling. So when we think about the $400,000, a good deal of that's going to come out of our pockets. And taxing people, taxing us in this economy, we're paying enough. This isn't, the majority of this isn't going to be paid from people who are just passing through. And it's going to impact the service people. It's going to have an impact on everybody. And now's not the time. But I will say that I don't think that this is something that we should never consider. And I think there will be a point in time when it's something we should do. It's just not today. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left to speak to the amendment for further study.
Eddie Pasevich, precinct.
Just a minute, gentleman on my left, was that before you?
Steve Curry, Precinct 5. I just had a question on the numbers. It may have to do with further study. But looking at the pamphlet that was passed out, the orange pamphlet, it shows that pretty much the average monthly income is going to be roughly about $29,000 coming in. On page 3, it says you have to spend $133 before you get the cost of $1 on this tax. And I was doing some numbers. If you take the $133 that need to be spent to receive the $29,000 a month, that comes out to roughly about 50, I'm sorry, to receive the $402,000 or $403,000, rounding it off, of the yearly income, which is derived from spending $133 at a restaurant for the $1, that means you'd have to spend almost $53.5 million to come up with the $400,000 per year at a restaurant. I mean, in the town itself. And if you take that number and divide it by the 58 or 53 million and change, divided by 30,000 people that may visit the town, that means every person is going to be spending $1,800 a year at a restaurant. And the numbers just, to me, don't seem to work out. So if you're going to spend 133, you get $1. So, and you're spending $100.
30 seconds.
It looks like there's going to be almost $500 million of revenue coming into the restaurant for the town to make $400,000 a year. The numbers just don't seem to work out. Is there any explanation?
Does anyone care to answer the question?
Madam Moderator, if I could, the example that cited through you to the previous speaker in the body, the factoring that you didn't look at is the bottom box, which would indicate that you'd have to drive a significant time to get to another location. It's 75 basis points on $100 or 38 cents on $50, depending upon what you spend. And that's in the top box through you, Madam Moderator. And so we were just trying to give you the example of what it would cost to get around, to find a place if you were going to try to avoid the meals tax. And I'm not sure people have that on their GPS. I certainly don't. But the idea here is that the dollars that you can see, by the way, on the previous chart, Matt, if I could ask you, on the municipal side, not only previous numbers generated by the Mass Department of Revenue, and you can see running from November 2009 through October of 2010, they do run pretty steady, and you can see how the months, excuse me if I could point out to you, August 2010, $44,143 and change. September 2010, $44,913 and change. So you can see how it really is the summer influx in what the Department of Revenue has projected, not only for the town of Wareham, but for all of the other cities and towns that have looked at this. And I do happen to agree with my board that this is a very difficult issue, and I stated that from the beginning. But I'm not certain that people are going to drive around the South Coast to find a town that doesn't have 75 cents on $100 that you would pay to get a decent meal. Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Moderator.
Andrews. You have 9 seconds, Mr. Curry.
How much, Madam Moderator?
9 seconds.
That wasn't the answer to the question, but just, if the town's spending people are
Ladies and
spending
gentlemen.
$54 million in the town, we should be doing a lot better.
Mrs. Slavin, were you up prior to Mr. Pasevich? I wasn't sure. No? No? Were you standing behind Mr. Sweat? No? Okay. Okay. Okay, Mr. Pasevich?
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. We're talking 75 cents per $100. So if I go out to eat 10 times at $100 a pop for me and my wife, I've spent a total of $7.50 on this tax. Please, ladies and gentlemen. 75 cents on $100? Is it really worth talking about? Is it going to interfere with business at all?
Okay, we
Who-
have an amendment before us. If we could speak to the amendment for further study.
That's what I'm speaking to.
Okay.
I'm rising against further study.
Thank you.
We're talking about 75 cents. If you're spending $100, are you looking at 75 cents? You won't even notice it. Nor will anybody else notice it. Not at 75 cents on $100. I urge you to vote against the amendment and vote for the original article. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Bronk?
Yes, I'm in agreement with the previous speaker, and I'm looking at this as an opportunity. And the town asked us to come together as an ad hoc group with the schools, the municipal, and the finances to work out problems in the town. And we came together and we fully supported this opportunity, because 75 cents on $100 is nothing, and it is going to affect our summer visitors more than it's going to affect us. And I urge you all, there are very few opportunities for money to get here, and this is a general opportunity. If you don't pay it here, you're going to end up paying it yourself totally in the tax bill.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left?
Cliff Sylvia, Fairfield Drive. I'd just like to, with all due respect, I have the utmost respect and regard for our select woman, but I couldn't disagree about the timing. I think the timing is now. I think that you've heard, or you haven't heard, but you know that we're going to postpone town meeting because we're in the middle of a budget crisis. And here's a situation in which we can solve an awful lot of issues at a minimal expense. Yes, it is a tax, but when I go get my pizza and I pay $10 for it, and I know that I'm going to pay an additional 8 cents for my $10 pizza, I think it's 8 cents well spent if we can put a roof on a building or manage our town in a fiscally responsible way. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time to do this. I strongly support defeating the amendment and voting for Article 18. Thank you.
Thank you. On my right?
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. This has been before us before, if I recall. And if we had voted on this and allowed it to go through last time, we would have had $400,000. If I think that's right, that's 5 school buses or 2 ambulances. And we would have had it already if we voted last time. Please vote against the further study.
I believe the gentleman on my right was next.
Just a quick point on previous speakers' numbers. I think we have a denominator problem. I agree the 53 million is probably approximately correct, But I think the numbers shouldn't be divided by 30,000. It probably should be divided by 100,000 or more. Keep in mind that many of the people that are coming to the mall, that are coming along Route 28, that are coming through this town have nothing to do with Wareham, which is the whole point of why this is something that needs to be done now. And that only works out to maybe $500 a year, which is something you can easily imagine some people spending on restaurant meals. Thank you.
Gentleman on my left.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bill Heaney, Precinct 1. I just have a question regarding this sheet that was handed out, and it's titled Estimated Revenues from Local Options Meals Tax of 0.75%. And then the sum of all the numbers from November 2009 to October 2010 actually equal the $402,682.63. So my question is, from a clarification perspective, does this page represent the actual meals tax that has been collected in that time period? Or does this page represent our expectation of what we can expect when we implement, if we do, the 0.75% meals tax?
To answer the question?
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker in the body, if you could quickly look to the bottom of the sheet, it's estimated by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, as I had indicated, for every city and town in the Commonwealth, based on the number of establishments and the regulations that are set forth in IGRs for cities and towns to look at. And it is the estimated revenues from the local options meal tax of 0.75%.
So are you saying, sir, that this information that we have is the representation of what the 0.75 would have been? Or is this the representation of what the town actually collected?
Mr. Haney, we have an amendment before us. Is this relative to whether you support or not support the amendment?
It is, because I don't know if we should expect $402,000 or $40,000 as a result of this implementation. And
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
State your point.
If I'm reading what's on the overhead projection, I see Massachusetts Department of Revenue estimated revenues from local option meals tax of 0.75%, and I see on the bottom source Mass Department of Revenue. I think it's clear to me that it's an estimate based on an options meal tax of 75%.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue, but that was really not a point of order that you rose to, but thank you for the information.
So,
Mr. Andrews? We're nearing the hour of 10, and what I'd like to try to do is at least get this voted, and then we only have 3 more articles. Just for your information, 2 of them will have a motion for indefinite postponement, so please keep this in mind if we can get through and take the vote on this, and then address that we only have 3 articles left. To answer the question, Mr. Andrews?
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, this is an estimate off the Massachusetts Department of Revenue website that you can see the modeling goes back to November of 2009 through October of 2010. So it's their projection for the 75 basis points if the body so desires to move forward with that recommendation. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Okay.
Thank you. On my right?
Madam Moderator, the ad hoc committee was one of the groups that also looked at this.
Can't hear you, Mr. Heath. I think if you just bring it close up to your mouth.
As I said, the ad hoc committee had to take a close look at not only what had to be cut from the budget, but also potential revenues. We faced some serious capital problems because we pushed a lot of things down the road. Now was not the right time. And we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. We've reached a situation where we do need some capital funds, and we need to find new revenue sources, new tax sources. Of all the forms of tax that are available to us, and I don't want to say any of the dirty words, this is the one that's probably the fairest. This is the one that's paid by every citizen of the town, every resident of the town, and every person who sits at a table in the town.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're approaching the hour of 10 o'clock. I would be happy to entertain a motion that we go beyond the hour to complete this article and/or take the remaining 3 articles that we have.
So moved.
Mr. Donahue, I'm sorry, Mr. Deacon, if we just make the motion by virtue of a microphone so people can hear you. Yes, please use the microphone.
I'd like to make the motion, Madam Moderator, John Degas, District 3, that we adjourn tonight's meeting and reconvene on May 23.
Okay, I believe we have...
Point of order,
just
Madam.
just a minute. Thank you, Mr. Deacon, but I believe that we already had a motion by Mr. Pasevich,
That's correct.
and his was before yours. Mr. Pasevich, just for clarification, would you make a motion again?
Yes, that we continue the meeting tonight until we finish all 3 articles.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion before us to continue beyond the hour of 10 to finish with the remaining articles that we have before us. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? I think the ayes have it. Okay.
Madam Moderator?
Right, Mr. Pasevich should continue to speak for the amendment on Article 18.
I move the question.
Thank you. We have a motion to move the question on Article 18. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We have Article 18 before us, the amendment made by Mrs. Winslow for further study. All those in favor of further study as made by Selectman Winslow, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. The amendment fails. We now have Article 18 before us as originally presented. Gentleman on my right.
My name's John Salerno from Precinct 2. I keep hearing that it's only 75 cents on a $100 bill, but I'm the person, we are the people, the restaurant owners, who are going to have to collect the money. So when our restaurant has everybody in it, we're collecting money from everybody. So quite honestly, with the meals tax going up 1 1/4 at the state level, another 0.75, I'm getting a little fed up. I don't want to collect taxes from everyone in my restaurant. Every single person walks through the door, I got to get the money out of them. I don't want to be the tax collector. You know, I really don't. It offends me that I should have to just go out and keep charging these people more money. I haven't raised the prices in 3 years because we got food prices, and we're all very well aware of food prices, have gone through the roof. And we are in a hard time right now competitively trying to compete against corporate America, who's just moved to town and getting every carte blanche. So I'd like you to think about the restaurant owners too, who employ the people of this town. I mean, I understand, I keep hearing the school committee, great idea. Well, why not? I keep hearing the finance committee, great idea. Why not? Hey, makes your job a little bit easier. I don't blame you. I'd be going after them. I'd go after the money too. But remember, it's not just the one person spending a little bit. It's the restaurant owners who are collecting the taxes on behalf of the town. I don't see the money getting spent the best way. I mean, I understand the school committee budget and everything, but to me, I see teacher and service days. I see kids staying out of school all the time. I don't get it. I don't get the teachers going back to school and the kids all going home.
30 seconds.
The teachers' union's pretty strong. You know, God bless them. But I want the kids in school, and I think if they stayed in school, you could reduce the school budget a little bit just by keeping them in school and fulfilling the requirements of a school.
Okay.
The school budget is...
We have a point of order.
Is the reason why I'm here collecting taxes.
Just a moment, Mr. Salerno. We have a point of order. State your point.
The current speaker is not speaking to the article. He's talking about the school department. He's not speaking to the article.
Thank you. Your point is taken.
I apologize.
Yes, 2
Maybe
seconds.
I'm out of order, but I understand the reason why I'm here, and you're asking us restaurant owners to collect the taxes.
Okay, your time was up,
It's been
Mr.
eloquently
Salerno.
stated to supply the school budget.
Okay, your
Thank you.
time was up. Thank you. On my right.
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. I support this article. Let me give you an example. I love my $3 meals at McDonald's. I paid 19 cents worth of taxes. At 625, it comes up to 18 cents, 18.75%, which means McDonald's keeps a quarter of a penny because they round the tax up to 19. I don't think that's fair. I'd rather have my quarter penny plus the other 2 cents going toward the town to do our capital appropriations. So I'm tired of giving McDonald's a quarter of a penny. Please approve the article. Thank you.
On my right.
I move the question.
We have a motion before us to move the question. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of moving the question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes by unanimous vote. We now have a vote before us on Article 18. And the motion before you is to move that the town vote to accept the provisions of General Law, Chapter 64L, Section 2, authorizing the town to impose a local meals tax at the rate of 0.75% on the sale of restaurant meals originating in town. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It passes by a majority. Article 22.
Madam Moderator, I would ask for a quorum count in the audience, please.
We have a request for a quorum count. Will the tellers please come forward?
I think we have.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you would take your seat for a quorum count. Will the tellers please take the count?
Oh, you got it? Oh, good. When are you guys going to do it? Go ahead. You do it.
It does.
Section 1. Section 2.
21.
Section 2, 21. Section 3.
'53.
Section 353. Section 4.
34, 34.
Section 434. We have 142. We have a quorum. Article 22 is before us.
Madam Moderator, I move to approve Article 22 as printed in the warrant.
Do I hear a second? To speak to the article? I believe Mr. Flaherty?
Yes, hi, this is Mike Flaherty, Precinct 1. I'll just keep it short. I'll just, if you haven't read it yet, this is the article for police details paid for at the expense of property owners in the case of instances where there's repeated crime at properties. This is based on an ordinance in Quincy where I used to live. Long story short is if the police are dispatched to a property for two times in a 12-month period, then the copy of the bylaw will be sent to the property owner. After 4 times, the police chief is empowered to place a police detail there at the expense of the property owner at the chief's discretion. Unlike the Quincy ordinance, I made sure this one actually would allow us to place a lien on the property owner, on the property, if the property owner didn't pay. And that's all been taken care of. I've worked with town council, Mr. Andrews, and Chief Stanley on this. I think we come up with a great article here, and I urge you to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On my left? Oh, I'm sorry. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
The vote of the Board of Selectmen, Article 22, was favorable action 5-0-0.
May I have the vote of the Finance Committee and its recommendation?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action, 7-0-0.
On my left?
Madam Moderator, through you to the body. There's a couple of things I'm not very fond of in this article.
May I have your name?
I'm so sorry. Kathleen Shields, Precinct 6.
Thank you.
I don't have time to address all of them. I'm going to address one and then ask a couple of questions. It's in Section 2. It says that the police chief does the policing, and then the police chief decides on the punishment, which is a detail, and then the person has a right to appeal it, but he appeals it to the police chief. Now, if you get a traffic ticket, you're allowed to at least appeal it to the district court. I think these people should have a right to appeal it to the Board of Selectmen or someone else. I mean, if I got a traffic ticket and I was told I had to appeal it to the officer that was giving me the ticket, I'd be appalled. So I would like that part looked into. Now I have a couple of questions. First, this was taken after Quincy, and I was wondering, did you call the police chief in the city of Quincy and ask him how he was working with this? What percentage of the people that this was put against got a lawyer and sued the town because of this?
20 seconds, Mrs. Shield.
Thank you. And how much did any of this cost the town?
Someone to answer the question for Mrs. Shield?
I'll try. I didn't speak with the police chief. I did speak with my former councilman, who was, who I actually used this ordinance with. We had a problem property in 2 doors down, repeated crime, repeated drug busts, repeated, drug overdoses and domestic violence, you name it. And finally, working with our selectmen, he said, we can just use, not my selectman, my councilman in Quincy. We had a little neighborhood watch going on. They said, we can use this ordinance. It's on the books. They sent a copy of the ordinance to the property owner. It was a 3-family. And wouldn't you know it, the problem fixed itself. We didn't have to post a detail or anything. So, no, I don't know how much it's cost the city of Quincy, but regardless, like I said, we would be able to put a lien on the property if we ever did incur a cost and that it didn't get paid.
No, I'm talking
Thank
about...
you, Mr. Finley. Mrs. Shields, direct your questions to the moderator, please.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
My question was, did they do any research on how this was working and how many people actually sued the town in an appeal because they were forced to have a detail officer? I'm in favor of this. It's not that. It's just that I don't think any research has been done on it.
Okay, and after that, your time is up. Is somebody would like to respond to the question?
Yes, through you, Madam Moderator. That's a good question. We had the same question, and we contacted the Quincy Police Department and spoke to a lieutenant. They've actually only had to use it a few times, which is great, because again, like the ordinance we just passed, it's another tool so that we can address people who are problems and say, listen, if you don't get your act together, if in fact you continue with this type of behavior, this is what you face. Now, we look at this in a couple of ways, and again, we go back to almost the same discussion. First of all, a police officer uses discretion, talks to the people, explains things to them, and let's face it, especially in this community, a resort community, you have a tremendous amount of absentee landlords who are renting to people, who are raising Cain in neighborhoods and disrupting the life that you all moved here for. So now what you have is, you have a tool for us, because the way this is written, the landlords get notified that the people in their homes are causing a problem and their associated costs. It gives them a chance to open dialogue with us. It gives us a chance to explain to them what is going to happen. And when they realize the cost associated with it, then compliance takes place. Quincy has had tremendous success with it. They haven't had any suits or anything along that line, nothing. They've got nothing but positives, and it very rarely has ever gotten to a point where they've had to actually put this into effect.
Thank you for answering her question, Chief Stanley. Chief Stanley, do you wish to speak to the article? No? Okay, Mr. Russell?
Yes, Irvin Russell, Precinct 6. Yes, this is another, possibly a tool, but I think it has the possibility of a whole bunch of unintended consequences to the community, and I don't think this is necessary anywhere around the town of Wareham. You know, Quincy might be Quincy. It may be more classified as a city than the community of Wareham. And this type of enforcement, I mean, it seems like a land grab, you know, or possibly could be a land grab. And I don't think we should be in delving into regulations such as this.
Thank you. On my right.
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. In Section 10, this might be a small point, but it refers to the general fund of the city. I thought we were a town. Thank you.
One quick point, Madam Chairman, Chief Stanley from the Police Department, Madam Moderator. I have to say that, with all due respect to the earlier speaker about this isn't Quincy, that's what we're trying to avoid, in my opinion. The situation is very dire here. I have people calling me on a regular basis about quality of life issues. My goal here is to raise the quality of life issues so that these type of problems don't take place. My goal is to make sure that this town is in fact a quiet place where you don't have these types of activities. I have people calling me about things taking place in the neighborhoods that would shock you, and harassment, and the things that go on with noise and with other things in certain homes that are draining the police department's resources and affecting our bottom line budget as we have to add additional patrols on your taxpayers' dollars. This gives us the tool to take these people, hold them responsible, hold them accountable, get them out of the way so that we can reduce some of the costs in the police department and put the pressure where the pressure deserves to be, not on the backs of the people who are sitting here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. With regard to Mrs. Slavin's comment, that was just a Scribner's error, and it should be town. Selectman Schneider?
I also rise in support of this article, and I commend Mr. Flaherty for bringing it forward. I think it's about time that we held folks accountable in this town who the police are being repeatedly called to their houses or apartments. I fully support this article. It makes financial sense, and it makes sense for the quality of life of the community. It does provide the police with another tool to increase the quality of life for our town. I don't really know, you know, if there's been legal action in the town of in the city of Quincy with respect to this article, but you know, at the end of the day, we could be challenged on anything. So I urge you. This is a great article, and I urge you to support it.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to move the question.
We have a motion before us to move the question. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes but unanimously. Article 22 now comes before you for a vote. It requires a majority vote. The motion is to move to approve Article 22 as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Passes by a majority. Article 21.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I move to indefinitely postpone action on Article 21.
Do I have a second? I have a second. To speak to the article for indefinite postponement? No one to speak? Okay. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 0 for, 3 against, 2 abstaining.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee voted favorable action 2 for, 3 against, 2 abstained.
Thank you. Anything to be said on indefinite postponement? I see no one standing to rise. Oh, we have someone on.
Madam Moderator, Donna Garvin, Precinct 6. Could I just ask clarification on the votes of the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee? Did they vote on the indefinite postponement, or was their vote on the original article as printed in the warrant?
Votes were, through you, Madam Moderator, the votes were on the original article.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the FinCom would like to answer the question?
That was the same with us.
Thank you. Hearing no other discussion, the motion before you is for indefinite postponement. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes by majority. Our last article before us is Article 29. May I have a motion?
Madam Moderator, I move to indefinitely postpone Article 29.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Anyone to speak to the article? Sure. Town Council?
Madam Moderator, through you to the meeting, this article is unnecessary because you took the action required under Article 19, so this is redundant.
May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
No vote was taken, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Finance Committee?
Madam Moderator, no vote was taken.
Thank you. Anyone to speak? Seeing no one
Motion to adjourn until May 23rd.
No, we need to take a vote. Just hold on. We have not taken a vote yet. On Article 29, we have a motion before us to move for indefinite postponement. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously for indefinite postponement. At this
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the town meeting until May 23rd.
I'll second
At what
that.
time?
7 p.m., is that what we did?
Correct.
Right here.
May I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say.
Point of order.
State your point.
Howard Smith, Precinct 4. I believe we've already made it. Can I speak? Thank you. I believe we already made a motion to adjourn the special meeting until May 23rd at 7 p.m. Can we have both meetings at the same time, or should we make arrangements to have a different time?
Under the special, we had made a motion to continue the special until 7:15. So Mrs. Ekstrom is correct that we will adjourn the meeting to May 23rd at 7 o'clock for the annual town meeting. We have a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We'll see you all on May 23rd